You guys asked me a bunch of questions over on Instagram earlier today, and I'm going to be going over and answering all of them. Hey guys, my name is Logan, or Cream Tag, and today we're going to be going over your guys' questions and answering some of the most commonly asked things I get about my cars, about me, and just about the stuff I do in general. Hopefully this will make for a pretty interesting video. You'll get to know me a little bit better, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions and maybe give you guys a little bit of wisdom that I may have as well. Alright, so we're gonna start off with the very first question, and it's what was your first mod on your Integra? Alright, so we're gonna go all the way back to January of 2022. That's when I bought my Cream Integra. I was super excited at the time. It was a really cool car. And within a few days after getting the car home, there was a couple of things that I did right off the bat. And the two big things were being, I installed a K-tuned short throw shifter, and I installed my TrueHeart Street Plus coilovers. Now, the reason why I had those two in the car and already installed only like 3 days maybe at the most after having bought the car is because I actually bought those parts for my first car. My first car was a 2000 Civic Si. It had gotten stolen, and that's why I bought the Cream Integra. But I had purchased those parts, I hadn't installed them, so I still had them waiting around. So I had a car I was able to put them into, and I was super excited with this car that was new to me. And so I tossed them in pretty quick, right off the bat. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 photos of the car actually before I lowered it. So I never actually really drove the car much at stock ride height. Alright, so the next question is from Connor, and he says, what state did you get your cars in? Did you do a lot of restorative work, or were they in good condition? I actually didn't buy them in any of the states. I live in Canada. I don't live in the States. I've done a road trip through the States, so that's why a lot of people think I am from there, and I've posted a lot of content from the States. I'm actually from Canada, live in Canada. Most of my cars, actually all of them except one, have been in Alberta where I live. Typically, it's normal for me to drive 3 hours one way to go look at a car. That's how I'm able to get a lot for a very good price. I'm willing to drive to a spot that's kind of out of the way, middle of nowhere kind of, where other people aren't likely to go or even look on Marketplace for said car. The furthest I ever went for a car was for the GSR, and that was all the way to Kamloops, BC. I actually flew down there and I drove the car back. The drive back was probably 7 hours. When you move a car between provinces, it has to undergo a pretty extensive inspection, so I had to get that done. And there's a couple of things there, but otherwise it's in great shape. All I've done to it so far is just oil changes and honestly just like performance and cosmetic mods so far. I haven't had to do any crazy maintenance or anything like that. It's been in great shape. I think the biggest one when it comes to like restoration would be the Cream Integra. It looked like it was in pretty decent shape when I bought it, but little did I know it actually was pretty rusty. Underneath was pretty bad, and I bought it at night, so it was kind of hard to tell, but I still got it for a really good price. I only paid $1,300 for the Cream Integra. That one I sanded the whole car down. I stripped all the insane amount of Bondo off the car, got rid of as much of the rust as I possibly could, used fiberglass. The plan originally was to temporarily repair the car in a way that will last for a good number of years until I have the ability to weld in new quarter panels, which I would have had done professionally. However, I still fiberglassed it, bondoed it up, resprayed the entire car. That's probably the biggest thing I've done. I got rid of all the rust. It was, I guess the exterior was technically rust-free, but the undercarriage was still bad, and the rust would come back eventually. So there's that. Otherwise, I haven't done anything like crazy in terms of resto. I've done a lot of paint on a number of different cars. I repainted the whole front end on my Mark II Supra. I've also done a little bit of paint work on my GS Integra because there's some spots where there's, you know, a little bit of surface rust that I got rid of completely. I've done a lot in the ways of actually like painting a car and cars and parts of cars. I also paint matched both the wings on my GSR and my GS Integra, so there's that as well. What made me buy my car? That's a good question. I'm gonna start with the Cream Integra. I think that's kind of the car that everyone knows me for. I bought that car, I kind of mentioned it earlier, because my first car got stolen, never recovered. I really liked my Honda. You know, it was a Civic Si, it was a ton of fun. So I wanted to get into another Honda, and there was kind of 3 things that I was looking at. There were Civics, again, 6th gen Civics, Integras, and RSXs, or Preludes. Those were kind of like the 3 main that I was kind of like looking at. Now, I kind of actually ruled out Integras at the time. At the time, they just weren't in my price range. There was nothing selling for anywhere near what I could afford, and all the other cars were kind of more budget friendly. It's kind of changed up a lot since then. You know, RSXs are typically more expensive. Same with Preludes. Preludes have gotten ridiculously expensive, but when I was looking, they were in the ballpark of $3 for a rust-free one. Then I just randomly was like, you know what, I'll do a search. And I searched up Integra and I looked, and the first thing that popped up, posted 4 minutes prior, was the Cream Integra. I messaged the guy immediately, drove out that night and bought the car, paid cash. Any performance mods you want to do. In terms of performance, I've got an exhaust, I've got intake, I've got like an aftermarket cooling system, I've got that K-Tune shifter in the car, and then I've also got a lot of suspension work. I've got coilovers and I've got lower control arms, and then I've also got, sitting right here, it's my subframe brace that's gonna go in as well. But things I want to do, but ideally to like continue improving my suspension, is like a really big one for me. Brakes are definitely a really important factor, but the big thing, kind of more long run within hopefully the next few years, would be a turbo. I want to boost the car. The plan is to pull the engine, take it apart, reseal it, replace head studs, rings, bearings, all that kind of stuff, basically make it a brand new motor, and then just run like 8 pounds. I don't want to do anything crazy. It's I just want that little bit of extra power out of it, but I don't want it to be insane. I still want it to be a car that in theory I could get into and daily drive throughout the summer. So that's why I want to run low boost, small turbo so it spools quick, and that's kind of the plan there. I also want to keep it somewhat reliable. I know turboing a car and calling it reliable don't really mix well, but that's kind of why I want to run low boost on a engine that is put together to be able to handle way more than what I'm throwing at it, basically. But yeah, boost long term, that's kind of my big one that I want to do. Other than that, I really want to keep the car very OEM plus. I know turbo isn't really OEM plus, but I mean, I don't want to go like crazy overboard with like turning this thing into a full-on like race car. I feel like making it into a good car that is trackable, dailyable, and really enjoyable. That's kind of what's important to me. All right, so the next one from Riley is, what got you into Integras? Nothing really specific, I guess. I just saw videos of them. I started getting really into Hondas when I had my first car, my Civic. And yeah, there's nothing really particular that really got me into them. I remember I used to always use them in Forza. Whenever I'd play Forza, I really liked using the Integra. I just love how they look. The two main like achievable dream cars were either a Prelude or an Integra, and I kept flopping back and forth between which one I want, and I eventually landed on Integras. Not that Preludes are bad in any way, I love Integras. I love how they look, I love how they perform, and if I were to be able to get a Prelude someday, I would in a heartbeat. I love how they look. The handling is the biggest thing for me. That's kind of what I really fell in love with, is just how well they drive and handle, and they're also stupid reliable. They make a really good project car, but they also make a really good daily. That's why I literally have an Integra as a daily and an Integra as a project car. So the next one is, what's the #1 thing I should check before buying an Integra? That's a really good question, and this is actually something I get asked a lot in my DMs. The #1 thing that I always check for whenever I look at any kind of Honda in general, but this especially applies to Integras, is rust. These cars really like to rust out fast and quick. There's kind of two main spots that these things like to rust, and that's in like the wheel arches at the quarter panels. They love to collect rust right in that little corner there, and as soon as they start, they'll go real quick. So that's a really good spot to check for rust. And then also check your rocker panels as well if you can. Make sure that those aren't super rusty, because those, again, they love to rust out. The factory side skirts, I think they like to like collect salt and dirt and debris and all that kind of stuff, and then that kind of helps make the rusting happen a lot faster. So the next question is, why did the chicken cross the road? I'm not a chicken, so I really couldn't tell you, but I'm gonna assume it's probably because he had places to be and things to do. All right, and the next question is, why did the chicken cross the road? Probably to block traffic. Best way to maintain paint? That is a very good question. First off, I'm going to say do a cut and polish. Make sure that you wash the car regularly and do it properly. Don't use the brushes at car washes. If you can, do it at home. Get a pressure washer, do it all yourself. You can pick out what chemicals you're using. You can get stuff that's less harsh. You can get stuff that's more effective as well. Another really big thing that you can do to really protect your paint is do PPF, paint protection film. Basically, you put that on your car and it's going to basically seal it in, it's almost like a wrap. It's basically a clear wrap, and you put it over your car and you're basically gonna be sealing the paint. You won't be able to damage it that way. I mean, the biggest thing though, just wash it regularly. When's the next rating car? If you guys want to see that, I would love to make more of those. So let me know in the comments down below if you want to see me rate more cars. I'll probably do one within the next couple of weeks, I'm not gonna lie. Cheaper to wrap or repaint? It really depends on what you want out of it and your skill level. If you know how to wrap a car really well, but you don't know how to paint one, it's probably gonna be cheaper to wrap a car because you're going to be able to do it on the first try and do it well. If you know how to paint a car, but you don't know how to wrap one, well, it's probably gonna be cheaper to paint a car yourself if you already have all that experience as opposed to wrapping. You're gonna have to learn and you're gonna have to mess up a couple of times before you get it right. Me personally, I prefer paint because paint lasts. If you want to be able to go back to your original paint color, wrap's the way to go because you can always peel that off and start fresh. For me personally, paint is cheaper because I have like amateur painting skills, and at the same time, I've never wrapped a car. I mean, there's ways to be able to paint a car for stupid cheap if you really want to. I've seen guys do it with rattle cans and make it look good for like 50 bucks. Have you ever considered the 4-door LS sedan, my favorite one? I honestly don't see them very often here. It's actually way more common to get 2-doors. Yeah, you just never see them. I think a 4-door would be a great daily, you know, more comfortable, have people in it, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, you don't see them here, and typically when you do, they're pretty expensive, and even if they are expensive and you do find one, they're typically automatic, and if they're manual, they're always rusted, and it's nearly impossible to find a good one in good shape that's manual for a decent price. It was actually easier for me to find my GSR, my rust-free GSR, for stupid cheap than it was to say find a LS sedan. All right, and then the last question I have from you guys is, what do you do for work to be able to afford the Taggies? I am a professional photographer and videographer. I will shoot and edit videos, I do photos, I do all that kind of stuff. I shoot cars primarily as much as I can. I also do a lot of like action sports. So things like skateboarding, basketball, those are kind of my two main ones that I've done on a professional level. While we're on the topic, if you guys say, you know, high school sports, college sports, whatever, if you're looking for a photographer or a videographer in the YYC, like kind of Calgary area, then shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to work with you. And if you tell me that you came from this video, I'd be more than happy to offer you a discount rate. That's kind of the big thing. I do a lot of that kind of like video work, and I have a lot of retainer clients that I work with. The other big reason why I've been able to afford them is purely just from lucking out when it comes to selling cars. I'll buy a car, I'll hold on to it, maybe do a little bit of work on it, and then, you know, a little while later, they'll go up in price and I'll resell it and I'll make a profit. That's really the biggest way I've been able to afford these cars easier, is simply just from buying and selling and having leftover cash to put into the cars. But yeah, I'm a photographer and videographer. That's what I do for a living. Thanks to all you guys who asked me some questions for the video. You guys asked a lot of really good questions, and hopefully, you know, I gave you a little bit of wisdom to take home. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, or send me a DM on Instagram. I'm always happy to respond. As always, if you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that post notification bell. It helps out the channel. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.